We're going to talk about some technology headlines. Amazon confirmed it's laying off 30 employees in its Buy with Prime unit. That's about 5% of the staff in that division, which lets online stores offer the 2-day shipping to customers. OpenAI is working with Arizona State University as its first higher education customer. Starting in February, faculty and staff will be invited to submit ideas for new ways to use ChatGPT in teaching and research and management. Apple is offering to open its contactless payment technology to third parties following an antitrust investigation by EU regulators. Apple says it will allow third-party mobile wallet and payment services in Europe to make these contactless payments on iPhones for free. They won't have to use Apple Pay or Apple Wallet, which charge transaction fees. Besides these big names in tech, there are many smaller companies working on innovations to address the world's most pressing issues. Mark New met with one of them that is working to transform materials that could save the planet.
It's estimated more than 100 million animals are killed for fur to supply the fashion industry each year. But with new bans on the fur trade in places around the world, including in California, many customers have turned to synthetic fur, a global market expected to be worth $720 million in 2 years.
People thought, oh, plastic fur is just, it's fine. You kind of solved for the main part of like not killing the animal, but then you did not solve for the second most important part, which some people even consider the most important part, the planet.
BioFluff is solving that problem by taking to the fields to utilize agricultural waste, everything from nettle to flax, a process that's very secretive.
Imagine in a lab setting it would require, let's say, different enzymes, different, let's say, containers where the fibers would move from one container to the other container to receive the enzymatic but also chemical treatments that they need to then be softer or to change their surface properties to be more like keratin-based animal hair. We're using natural green chemicals, so there are no harsh or petrol-derived chemicals in our process.
These are the groundbreaking samples.
A short version of the natural fiber that we are using to create the first plant-based fur. What you have here on your side is the long version of a completely natural-based white fur imitation. Tries to imitate a fox fur or something longer like a raccoon or maybe a coyote. And from this base material, we then start to create color, to add color in a dyeing process using mostly natural dyes. And we can go as crazy as, for example, this kind of very colorful variation of fur, which is probably can be called a fantasy fur.
Stubler says their material is getting close to the durability of synthetic fur and to the softness of animal fur.
This is the softness that we can achieve with our material, completely based on natural plant-based fibers.
But they can adjust softness, strength, and texture to what the customer wants.
So this is usually what's used for like the collar part or the hoodie of a bomber jacket.
One major advantage of this material is that at the end of its lifespan, well, it can be composted over a several-week process and completely biodegrade. Or even if it was just left as waste in the ground, as moisture set in, it would disappear in about a year.
Stubler says BioFluff is currently working with brands like LVMH and aims to have their material in a coat this year for Stella McCartney under its brand Savion. Stubler says right now their production costs are lower than animal fur but still higher than synthetic fur. But BioFluff hopes more customers will find it worth the cost since it's one that doesn't come at the expense of the planet. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
For more about everything in the tech world and what's happening, we're joined by Maribel Lopez. She's the founder and principal analyst of Lopez Research. Good to see you and welcome to the show. Let me start with technology. We ended the year with a huge bang. I mean, you saw what the stock market did and the NASDAQ did with all the tech stocks. And then we had a little break for a few days, and then we're off to the races again. Everyone is still talking about AI. Half the people, or more than half the people, love AI. The other half think we've gotten maybe too far into a little bit of a bubble. What's going on?
I think we're actually at a really exciting time in AI, particularly in the consumer landscape. We just came off of CES, and we were seeing people really try to have computing live around you so they can use it in a more natural way. Obviously, we're more than a year into the whole ChatGPT thing, so everything is getting some type of conversational interface. And the more that gets used, the better it does become. So this is an economies of scale over time. So while it can't do everything, it's doing a lot more than I think any of us expected it to do. And we're just hitting that next cusp, the new wave where we start to talk about moving beyond typing and looking at gestures and eye tracking and biometrics, such as opening your door with your palm. So, all these are really exciting innovations because it used to mean that in order to do computing, you had to learn how to speak computer. What were the different keystrokes? What were the different menu items? And now the idea is I just want to speak to it and ask it to do things for me and help me out and guide me.
I want to tell Alexa to turn on the lights and turn off the lights, and so that was sort of phase one of basically bossing the computer around. But I feel like AI is reaching a point where I guess you could boss the computer around, but the computers are now making decisions, right? It's thinking, it's creating. It at some point is going to boss us around. We're not driving the car anymore. The computers are driving the car. Then it leads to the second part, which is, well, what do we do? How do our lives, how are they going to be changed by AI in 2024?
Well, I think we're not quite at the full bossing around part yet, but Phil, you're really onto something because we're getting it to be more personal. It's more predictive. It's more prescriptive. It could automate a lot of things for you if you allow it to do so. One of the big disconnects we have right now that I think consumers and businesses have to worry about is making sure your data isn't being put into these large open models. So now we're talking about having smaller, more personalized models. Rabbit called them large action models. We've heard people call them personal language models. So there will be another iteration on AI that I think helps us get more control over what data we put in and what type of actions we'd like to do. But we're still in the learning phase. There's always issues with technology like AI, but I still think we have a long way to go.
Can AI plan my vacation or someone's wedding? And it knows everything about me. It knows where I like to go, who I like to bring. And I say, I want to plan a trip. Can it do all that?
Well, these are learning systems. So in the beginning, it can plan a vacation for you, but it might not be a vacation that's really optimized for you. And the reason that is you'd need to tell it a lot of things that you don't necessarily think about. Do you have children? Do you have pets? Do you like museums? Do you want more of an action vacation? So it has to basically have a dialogue with you to extract all this information. But if you have software and systems that do that, which we're getting closer to, but we aren't quite there yet, then yes, it could plan the perfect vacation for you. But right now, we have to give it too much information, and we don't know what information to give it.
Right.
So they call this prompt engineering in AI speak, and just the fact that it's called prompt engineering tells you how far we are from it being a garden variety consumer thing. But we're getting closer to
Some other tech making a little bit of a comeback, I think. Facebook originally had the goggles where you could pretend to be somewhere and then people got dizzy, and now they've got a new version of this. We had glasses that didn't work out. So there's a lot of stuff that it seems like it's being recycled, but everyone is saying the new recycled version is better than ever, and it solves some of the challenges of the past. I don't know if you've tested some of these things out, but I'm wondering what's going to be hot this year.
Yeah, so this is a great example. This is why Apple's entering this market now. If you look at what Apple does in a space, it waits till it gets to a certain level of maturity, and then it goes in and refines a lot of things. So what are we seeing that's different that might be helpful? I'm spot on with you. We've seen many, many failures in AR, VR. But the silicon chips are more powerful now. They're smaller. They're more power efficient as well. So that's going to help us bring down the cost curve and make things that are lighter and cheaper. So that's the first thing. Right now, something like VR is just too expensive for most people to want to participate in. And then we started to get smarter about how to use things like gestures. So we've really learned a lot in smartphones with touch, and we've learned a lot in terms of how to use a different functionality. So I think all that learning from the smartphone world is actually being pulled into AR, VR. I still think it's very expensive, and early days for the generation that you'd want to use, but I like the concept of the power and the AI that we were talking about. That's really pushing forward this whole VR landscape as well.
We just wrapped up CES. What's the coolest thing that you saw that you potentially, as an analyst, would want to invest in?
Well, I'm a TV person, so I was kind of enamored with the transparent TV concept. I'm not sure if I quite want to go there yet. But the great thing about CES is we were starting to see lots of things that blended in. So maybe you had lights that were projectors, maybe you had transparent TVs, maybe you had artwork that looked like speakers. So we saw a lot of that. We already talked about the conversational interfaces. Wearables started to go into more of a smaller form factor. If you don't want to wear a watch, maybe you want to wear a ring. So we saw all different kinds of rings. We saw many, many different appliances that were smart. So we've talked about ovens, but even showers, right? So the thing I took away from CES that excited me was that everything was going to become more intelligent and more connected. So as a result of that, I think we're just going to have a choice of like whoever you are and whatever you want to do, there's a product for you.
I will let you know when I figure out who I am. This technology is moving at a pace that's just really, really hard to fathom. Appreciate your insights on this, Maribel Lopez from Lopez Research. Thank you.